The first sign was the hush. Noon light spilled through the skylight, polishing the marble until it looked wet. A violin loop whispered from hidden speakers. Conversations buzzed at banker volume, until the revolving glass breathed open and a tall black man in a charcoal suit stepped through like the building had invited him by name. "Sir, everyday line is to the left," a teller said, smiling the kind of smile that fences you off. Her manicure glittered, her tone didn't. Phones paused mid-text. A security guard shifted his weight. The man set a leather portfolio on the counter and placed his driver's license beside it with courtroom calm. "My account files and a safe deposit record," he said. "Time sensitive." The smile cooled. "Premium files aren't retrieved without an appointment, and those services are reserved for qualifying clients." Qualifying rang like a dropped coin. Behind him, a young woman near the ATM tapped record. The marble caught its breath. "Call your branch manager," the man replied. "Security." The teller murmured to no one and everyone. He didn't raise his voice. He lowered it, steadier, heavier. "Please call your branch manager." He didn't have to wait long. The glass cubicle opened and the manager strode out, blazer crisp, certainty crisper. "P. Ramsey." Branch manager gleamed from her nameplate like a verdict. "What's the disruption?" she asked. "Request for immediate access to my files," he said. "We do not accommodate walk-ins for executive services," she replied. "If you're attempting an unusual caching or a vault request, that will not happen here." He angled his head a fraction. "I'm asking you to do what your posters promise. Dignity at every counter." "Sir," she said, "we reserve the right to refuse behaviors that compromise safety. Please step back or I'll call the police." The violin stopped mid-phrase. The ATM camera inched closer. The guard's hand hovered over his radio. Open, not gripping. The man exhaled once. "Okay," he said quietly. Then he lifted an envelope from his portfolio. The crest on the flap caught the chandelier's light. Ellison Capital. A few people recognized the logo the way one recognizes a skyline. By who owns it? "What exactly is that supposed to mean?" the manager asked, composure fraying by a thread you could almost hear. "It means the conversation is about to leave this lobby." He slid his license back into his wallet, texted 6 words into a group thread that answered to corner offices, and pocketed the phone. "Move the vote up. I'm done." He looked around. Not defiant, not pleading, just present. "Everyone here will be okay," he told the room. "I'm not here to ruin lives. I'm here to fix a bank." More phones rose. Whispers braided into headlines. Who is he? What's Ellison? Why is she escalating? The manager squared herself, mistaking quiet for weakness. "Final time," she said. "Leave, or security will escort you out." He smiled, the kind that changes barometric pressure. "Ms. Ramsey, the door I'm using isn't the one you're pointing to." The guard blinked. The tellers froze. The ATM video captured a detail everyone would replay later. The man's posture never changed. He didn't posture at all. He tapped the envelope once. "There's a better way to do this," he said. "You could simply ask for my name." The manager hesitated. It was microscopic, but it lived on 6 cameras. "Your name?" she said at last. He nodded. "Noah Ellison." Silence thickened. Someone in line gasped softly. A businessman lowered his newspaper with both hands, as if it had become heavy. The manager's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Mr. Ellison," she said, each syllable discovering gravity. "Do you have identification besides?" "I do," he said, but he didn't offer it. He wasn't auditioning. "What I want is access to my files and a private room. Or, alternatively, I'll take the boardroom." "The boardroom," she repeated, as if tasting a foreign word. He glanced at the ceiling as if measuring the building's spine. "You'll understand shortly." He gathered the envelope and the portfolio, stepped away from the counter, and, without dramatics, dialed a number that made 3 directors stand up from lunches they hadn't started. He listened, said, "Yes, today," and ended the call. Then he returned to the counter and did the smallest, kindest thing he'd done all day. He thanked the teller for her time. It confused her so much it softened something. As he turned for the elevators, the violin loop found itself again. The lobby breathed. People realized they were watching a beginning, not a scene. The manager stared at the envelope as if it were a mirror. 13 minutes. That's all it took for a habit to show itself, and for a system to meet someone it could no longer ignore. Not because a man shouted, but because he refused to. The video was everywhere before the elevator reached the top floor. A silent clip, a calm man, a trembling manager, an envelope stamped Ellison Capital. The internet did what it always does, added judgment where context should have been. Hashtags bloomed. But Noah Ellison didn't need to scroll. He already knew how fast a seed of prejudice could grow in digital soil. He sat in the back seat of the black sedan, eyes closed. The hum of traffic blended with the memory of a teller's voice from decades earlier, his mother's sigh when her paycheck was held for verification. The sting of dignity delayed never left a person, it just learned patience. His assistant, Jayla, white-knuckled the steering wheel. "We should make a statement before it mutates," she said. "Not yet," Noah replied. "Talking too soon is how people join the argument instead of ending it." She hesitated. "You sure you don't want to press charges?" He smiled without mirth. "I don't need an arrest. I need reform." The car slid into the underground garage. Cameras flashed as news alerts buzzed on her phone. Bank manager accused of racial profiling CEO. Jayla winced. "They figured it out." "They always do," Noah said, stepping out. "Now let's give them something useful to watch." The elevator swallowed them in polished silence. Noah leaned against the wall, voice soft. "My mother used to say calm is what you do when you've already won, but the world hasn't noticed yet." Jayla smiled. "She sounds like a fighter. She's a survivor. There's a difference." The elevator chimed. "Let's get to work." On the 36th floor, 3 board members waited. People who could move markets with a sentence. A video paused on the wall screen, showing Patricia Ramsey's frozen face. The regulator, the fintech founder, and the foundation chair all looked to Noah as he entered. "You kept your composure," said the founder. "I don't know how." "Anger's a luxury," Noah replied, loosening his tie. "Calm pays better." The regulator gestured to the paused frame. "They'll claim protocol, not prejudice." "Then we'll show what protocol looks like when dignity writes it," Noah said. He opened a folder of numbers, branch performance charts, complaint ratios, demographic data that screamed quiet inequality. The problem isn't her. It's a culture that thinks suspicion is professionalism. The chair leaned forward. "You want to acquire the bank outright?" "Yes," Noah said. "Not to punish. To rebuild. The brand, the habit, the trust. We can make inclusion measurable, turn morality into math." "How?" asked the regulator. 3 steps, Noah said, drawing invisible pillars in the air. Access. Accountability. Repair. Access means open doors for everyone, tracked in real time. Accountability means data, not bias. Repair means owning mistakes before the internet does. Jayla slid folders to each member. The acquisition terms are ready. Moving the vote up saves the company from PR collapse and saves thousands of employees from one manager's ignorance. The room filled with the sound of pages turning and something rarer, agreement. Later, as the directors signed, Noah stepped to the window. The city glittered below, towers of glass built from generations who never got to step inside. He remembered his mother counting bills under yellow light, whispering to him, "One day, you'll hold doors for people who never saw them open." Today was that day. Jayla's phone buzzed. She glanced, then grinned. "Your mom saw the clip. She says you misused a comma." Noah chuckled. "She edits everything I do." She also said, "You weren't humiliated, you were tested." He looked out at the skyline. "Then let's help the bank pass its next test." At the same time, in a smaller office downtown, Patricia Ramsey stared at her reflection. Calls from corporate. Messages from PR. None answered. The envelope's logo replayed in her mind. Ellison Capital. Her stomach turned cold. She whispered to the empty room, "What have I done?" Upstairs, Noah finished his final signature. "Jayla," he said, sliding the document across. "When the ink dries, call her in." "For an apology?" "For a conversation," he said. "We fix people the same way we fix banks, by showing them the numbers and the truth." He glanced at the boardroom clock. It read 3:47 p.m., exactly 2 hours since he'd walked out of the branch. 2 hours to turn humiliation into history. The boardroom gleamed like an engine of power, glass walls, oak table, and a skyline stretching beyond belief. At one end, numbers glowed on screens. At the other, silence waited for explanation. The story from the marble lobby had already reached every director in whispers and headlines. They weren't here for rumors. They were here for the truth. Noah Ellison entered without entourage, jacket unbuttoned, presence calibrated between calm and command. The board members, investors, analysts, and strategists rose almost instinctively. He nodded once, the gesture of a man who didn't need introductions. The former regulator, a woman with eyes sharp enough to pierce excuses, broke the silence. "You were the man in that video." "I was," Noah said simply. "And we're not here to discuss embarrassment. We're here to discuss opportunity." The fintech founder, younger but already world-weary, leaned forward. "Opportunity? A branch manager tried to throw you out of your own acquisition target." "Exactly," Noah said, voice measured. "We just caught, on camera, the single clearest example of why Mid-City Bancorp is failing quietly. Arrogance disguised as professionalism." He tapped the tablet in front of him. Charts blossomed across the wall, branch ratings, demographic gaps, lost clients. These numbers aren't bad luck. They're habits. Every ignored customer complaint, every prejudged face, it all compounds like interest. But so can change. A murmur rippled. He had turned the humiliation into a case study, the prejudice into proof. "Here's the plan," Noah continued. "We buy the bank. We rebuild its soul." The foundation chair frowned. "And what happens to the manager? Public firing? Legal action?" Noah shook his head. "No spectacle. She'll be disciplined and retrained, not destroyed." People don't learn from flames. They learn from facing what they've built. The regulator smiled faintly. "You're turning a PR nightmare into an institutional rebirth." "That's the only kind worth having," he replied. He clicked again. A slide appeared. Access. Accountability. Repair. Access means no one waits longer or gets treated worse because of how they look. Accountability means we measure bias like balance sheets. Repair means we admit when we fail and fix it where everyone can see. The fintech founder nodded. "You're talking about quantifying respect." "Exactly," Noah said. "Morality becomes policy when you can measure it." Votes were cast, not whispered or delayed. Every hand rose. The acquisition was unanimous. The man who'd been refused service now owned the very system that had denied him. Hours later, Patricia Ramsey stood in an unfamiliar conference room, eyes red, palms damp. She'd been summoned, though she didn't yet know by whom. When Noah entered, she froze. The air thinned. "Ms. Ramsey," he said evenly. "Sit, please." She obeyed, every cell braced for punishment. "I want to hear your version," he said. I thought I was protecting my staff," she stammered. "You didn't look like our usual clients. No appointment, urgent request." "Stop there," Noah said gently. "You didn't see a risk. You saw a stereotype. That's the real danger, when bias wears the uniform of safety." Her voice cracked. "I didn't mean to offend you." "I know," he said. "That's why this isn't about intention. It's about consequence." He slid a document toward her. Reassignment papers, a new training program, reduced authority, but not termination. "You'll learn. You'll work behind the scenes until you can see beyond appearances. I believe in consequences that teach, not destroy." Tears blurred her eyes. "Why give me another chance?" "Because someone once gave me one," Noah said quietly. "And I learned. That's how we break the cycle." When she left, Jayla entered, holding a phone. Videos passed 1 million views. "You're trending." Noah exhaled. "Then let them watch transformation, not retaliation." He looked out the window, where the city stretched endlessly, a network of lives waiting for fairness that didn't need hashtags. "This isn't revenge," he murmured. "It's renovation." Below them, at the branch that had once humiliated him, the violin loop began again, softer this time. The same marble, the same doors, but soon, a different kind of welcome. The morning after the vote, the city's financial news feeds exploded. Ellison Capital acquires Mid-City Bancorp in historic leadership shakeup. Headlines called it a hostile takeover, but inside Ellison's quiet boardroom, Noah Ellison simply called it a correction. He hadn't bought a bank to boast power. He'd bought a chance to fix a broken system. At sunrise, his mother called. "You did it," she said. Her voice carried both pride and warning. "Now make sure they see your purpose, not your victory." Noah smiled. "That's the plan, Ma. Rebuilding from the inside." The acquisition didn't begin with layoffs or PR spin. It began with listening. Noah met every department head, not as CEO, but as a student. "Show me how customers feel when they walk in," he'd say. Branch after branch, he saw the same pattern. glass walls, polite smiles, invisible barriers. At the flagship location, the same one where it all began, Noah returned unannounced. The marble still gleamed. The chandeliers still glowed. But the air was lighter now, nervous and expectant. Every employee knew the video. Every eye flicked toward him as if awaiting judgment. He smiled gently. "Good morning," he said. "Let's get to work." That day marked the start of what internal memos would later call the Dignity Project. It wasn't a slogan, it was a system. Noah knew that if respect could be tracked, bias could be dismantled. He introduced 3 new pillars: access, accountability, and repair. Access. Every customer, regardless of background or balance, would be greeted within 60 seconds. Accountability. Interactions were tracked by response time and sentiment scores. Repair. Any discrimination complaint bypassed management and went straight to corporate headquarters, directly to Noah's desk. Screens in each branch began displaying service equity dashboards. No hiding. If a branch failed the dignity metrics, it was visible to everyone, from tellers to executives. The change was seismic. Some employees resisted. Others embraced it like oxygen. One veteran teller whispered, "It's about time we stop confusing exclusive with exclusion." A lesson for leadership. Back at headquarters, Patricia Ramsey sat in a small, plain training room. Gone were her corner office and glass walls. She'd accepted Noah's offer. To learn, to change, to stay. The first lesson was brutal. A diversity coach replayed her viral moment frame by frame. Each second of her condescension dissected, each choice examined. Patricia wept quietly, not for losing status, but for finally seeing herself. Weeks passed. She began volunteering in customer resolution, learning to solve problems she once caused. She wrote apologies, not scripted PR lines, but letters in her own hand. One she sent to the young woman who had filmed that infamous TikTok. "Thank you," she wrote. "Your courage made me face who I'd become." Noah read a copy and said only, "Good." The new culture. Ellison's reforms rippled across the country. At smaller branches, tellers were trained to see customers as partners, not profiles. Security guards, once told to stand watch, now received empathy training, learning to de-escalate, not intimidate. Noah's favorite story came from a branch in Chicago. A janitor, who'd been ignored for years, was invited to speak at a staff meeting. He told them about the customers who lingered outside, too anxious to enter. "They think we'll judge them before they reach the door," he said. "Smile sooner. It helps." The next week, foot traffic doubled. The promise. 6 weeks after the acquisition, Noah held a press conference. He didn't hide behind a podium. He stood in the middle of the lobby where everything had started. Reporters packed the marble floor. "This isn't revenge," he began. "It's repair. I didn't buy a bank to punish anyone. I bought it to prove that profit and humanity don't cancel each other out." Cameras flashed, catching his calm conviction. He ended with words that would echo across social feeds. "Respect is our first service. Money comes after." Outside, a crowd gathered. Customers, employees, strangers who had seen the viral clip. A grandmother approached Noah and pressed his hand. "You changed how people look at us," she said softly. Noah smiled. "No," he replied. "We just remembered how to look at each other." By the time the acquisition's dust settled, the headlines had cooled, but the change was only beginning. Inside the gleaming glass towers and small-town branches alike, Mid-City Bancorp, now Ellison Financial, was learning a new rhythm, one measured not in profit margins, but in people treated right. The world expected fireworks, firings, and fury. What they got instead was transformation, instant karma that didn't destroy, but rebuilt. The bakery on Jefferson Street. One morning, a woman named Luz Maureen walked into the same downtown branch where Noah Ellison had once been refused service. Her bakery on Jefferson Street had survived on love and long hours, not loans. She carried a folder stuffed with receipts and dreams, expecting another polite rejection. But today, the bank felt different. The marble looked warmer somehow, the light less judgmental. Behind the counter stood a new manager, Maria Rodriguez, the same woman who had once been told she didn't look professional enough for a business account. Now she wore that same dignity like armor. "Good morning, Ms. Maureen," Maria said with a genuine smile. "You're here about expanding your bakery?" Luz blinked. You know my name?" Maria grinned. We keep track of the people who build our neighborhoods. Let's see how we can help you grow. An hour later, Luz walked out approved for a small business loan, the same amount she'd been denied twice before. Tears blurred her vision as she looked back at the building. The world hadn't just changed, it had caught up to fairness. The guard who became a teacher. Down in Atlanta, Thompson, the security guard who had once stood frozen during Noah's confrontation, now trained other guards across the company. His module was simple: be a door, not a wall. He told his trainees, people walk in carrying yesterday. If you make that heavier, you failed your post. Our job is to make the load lighter. In 6 months, complaints about hostile guards dropped by 70%. Thompson didn't just keep people safe anymore, he made them feel safe. The numbers that told the truth. Noah's reforms weren't just moral victories, they were measurable miracles. Customer retention rose 43% in the first quarter. Minority-owned business accounts increased by 312%. Employee satisfaction jumped to record highs, especially among frontline staff. Analysts tried to explain it in economic terms, but no one knew better. Respect had become the new currency, and it was paying dividends. At the next investor meeting, a shareholder asked, "Are you running a bank or a social experiment?" Noah smiled. "Both. Because people who feel seen don't leave. And that's good business." Redemption and repair. In a modest training office, Patricia Ramsey sat through another week of the bias reversal program. Her title was gone, her power stripped, but her voice, at last, was real. She led group discussions with new hires, teaching them how her failure became the company's transformation. One afternoon, she recorded a message for staff orientation. Her eyes were tired but honest. "I was the manager who refused service to the man who now signs my paycheck," she said. "But instead of firing me, he made me face my actions. That's the hardest thing anyone's ever done for me, and the best." The clips circulated internally, used in every leadership workshop. It became a quiet anthem of accountability. Learn, don't hide. The circle closes. On a Friday afternoon, Noah visited Luz's bakery. The smell of vanilla and cinnamon filled the air as she handed him a loaf with a shy grin. "How special," she said. "Paid for with your belief." He laughed softly. "No, paid for with your persistence." As he left, a group of high schoolers passed by the window, talking about the viral video that had started it all. "That guy owns the bank now," one said. Instant karma. But Noah shook his head as he walked to his car. Not karma, he thought. Correction. The world saw a story of revenge. But those who worked inside Ellison Financial knew the truth. This was the story of rebuilding a broken house without tearing down the foundation. 18 months later, the marble floors of the flagship branch gleamed again, not with intimidation, but with light. The violin music that once played through hidden speakers was now real, a trio of local high school students performing for lunchtime customers. The building smelled faintly of coffee and paper, alive again with laughter instead of whispers. Noah Ellison stood near the entrance, hands folded, watching people come and go. No security tension, no raised voices, just rhythm, a living system rebuilt on trust. For the first time since that infamous day, it felt like the space finally matched the dream that drove him to buy the bank in the first place. The test of time. Transformation is easy to start, hard to sustain. But Ellison Financial had done it. Discrimination complaints were down by 90%. Customer retention was at record highs. The Dignity Index, a proprietary system measuring fairness in every branch, had become an industry standard. Noah read the morning report on his tablet. Community Reinvestment Program expanded to 3 new cities. Minority-owned small business lending up 350%. Numbers that once belonged to social campaigns now lived in profit statements. But the most satisfying line came from a simple comment written by a customer. "For the first time in my life, a banker looked me in the eyes and saw a person, not a profile." Noah smiled. That's the real interest rate, he thought. The return of an old name. He was halfway through his day when a visitor approached, a woman with careful steps and tired eyes. The receptionist whispered her name like a secret. Patricia Ramsey. Noah turned. She looked smaller than he remembered. Her pride melted into humility. "Mr. Ellison," she said softly, "I came to thank you." He studied her a moment before answering. "You did the work yourself. I just wanted you to know," she continued. "I've been mentoring new managers, teaching them what I learned here. Not policy, perspective. That's worth more than policy, Noah said. She hesitated. Do you ever forgive it? What I did. He smiled, not with triumph, but with peace. Forgiveness isn't a pass. It's proof that the lesson stuck. Patricia nodded, tears catching the light. Then she turned and walked out into the sun, unchaste, unjudged. Growth doesn't always make noise. A new generation. Later that afternoon, a young black woman entered the same lobby with a business proposal clutched to her chest. Nervous, hopeful. Her name, Danielle Johnson, the daughter of one of the construction workers who'd once been refused a loan. This time, the staff didn't glance twice at her clothes or accent. They welcomed her, offered coffee, listened. She left 30 minutes later with an appointment for funding review and a smile that could light a city block. From the mezzanine, Noah watched quietly. The circle had closed. The speech that went viral. At a national conference weeks later, Noah gave a keynote titled The ROI of Respect. It wasn't about balance sheets. It was about humanity. People think racism ends with laws, he said. But it ends with habits. Every greeting, every assumption, every small moment is an investment. Some banks invest in wealth. We invest in worth. The crowd rose. Reporters tweeted lines before he finished them. But the part that traveled furthest was his closing. When you refuse to serve someone because you think they don't belong, you're not just turning away a person, you're turning away progress. I learned that the hardest way. Now we make sure no one else has to. Full circle. Months later, Noah returned once more to the flagship branch, incognito in jeans and a hoodie. No camera crews, no press. He stood in line like any other customer. The teller smiled at him. Good afternoon, sir. How can I help you today? Just checking on my account, he said, voice low. She processed his request quickly, handed back his card, and said with genuine warmth, Thank you for banking with us. Noah grinned. If she only knew. Walking out, he paused at the glass doors and watched the reflection of the bank's new motto engraved above the entrance. Respect first. Always. That was the real victory. Not the acquisition, not the headlines, but this. A place where anyone could walk in and feel seen. He stepped into the bright afternoon, phone buzzing with messages from investors, reporters, and policymakers. He ignored them for a moment to look up at the sky, whispering a silent thank you to his mother, to the janitors, to every person who'd kept dignity alive when the world tried to steal it.